So let's talk about this conversation that we had at FinCon. I said to you, how do I apply to come work for Grove? Where do I go to fill out the application? Your feedback to me was, if you really wanted the job, why would you fill out the application? Like, how do those two go together? I still barely understand.
Yeah, so I think when I was starting to, cut my teeth in tech, I came out to San Francisco. I was like, I want to get a job, and I didn't really have a huge set of marketable skills. I wasn't an engineer or designer, and so I really needed to kind of prove myself in some way, shape, or form. Lots of people are out there. I'm just going to apply for every job, and I assume that everyone's applying for every job. I think one time I applied for a job at Google, and I got a rejection email for the job in like less than 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, so this is not the path. I even later, once I ended up working at Google, found the person that sent it, was like, was this automated? And then she was like, no, it just popped up, looked at your resume, you weren't a fit, goodbye. And I was like, there's surely no way that an employer can get a full picture of me and decide whether they want to hire me in that short of a time frame. And so I was like, there's got to be another way. So I made a short list of companies that I was like, these are the companies that I really want to work with or work for. And, I thought, what do I care about? What are the problems I want to solve? I just went all in on one company first. This company, Simple Geo. I was really excited about their mission. I was really excited about what they did. Had a lot of respect for the founders. And I was like, okay, so first I was like, what's every path I have to the founders? I made a presentation that was like a 20-minute PowerPoint about why I thought I would be, of huge value add to the company. I found someone I knew that was one of their investors, and I got them to convince the founders to let me give them a presentation. And so I pitched them like, a 20-minute presentation with slides why they should hire me. And they did. So here we are. Like, that was my first job in tech. I kind of went all out and tried to get everyone I know to send notes and references and tell people how awesome I was so that, they would even consider me for a job that they didn't even have yet.
Let's go back and let's kind of parse that down. So there were multiple things there you did that were incredible. One of them was identify a company that you can really get excited about and then pin down actually why that is. You should be able to define that and then look for essentially what I felt like I heard you say was, what are their challenges? What are their struggles? Is that something that I can help with? That kind of helped you create the frame. But regardless of doing all that research, one of the things that really stood out to me is you needed to identify a path to the founder. Could you explore that a little bit further?
Yeah. So if you break it down, now that I'm on this side of the table, it's like, there is nothing I want more than to hire someone who's like wildly passionate about what we're doing, right? Working at a startup's hard. Early in your career, almost all things you're learning how to do. So that's hard. If you have the excitement about what you're doing, I am, as the, hiring manager, way more convinced that you'll be able to get through whatever roadblocks you have if you're super passionate about what we're doing as a company. Seeing that is almost like, wow, we've got to figure out a way to make this work. There's a guy on our team named Arthur who we hired who sent me a presentation similar to the one I had sent to Simple Geo and was like, here's all the stuff I could do. I love what you're doing. And he just hammered me for 6 months. He was like, I gave this presentation at work about financial wellness. Here it is. Here's an article that's awesome. You should read it. And eventually we finally had a role that made sense for Arthur. And he was the first person I called. And I was like, Arthur, we have this role. You have to come in and interview.
I actually think you were talking about Arthur when we were talking at FinCon sometime last year. It's like, I don't have space for this guy. So let's work through Arthur's journey if we can do that for just a moment. So day one, he sends you an email. Give us some sense of what that first email looks like. And do you reply? Because what's Arthur's path to the founder, right?
Yeah. So a cold email, I think. Almost every email is out there, right? Like if you can't find an email of someone somehow, you're doing it wrong. Like, it's going to be tough for you to get that job. So he just sent an email and he's like, Grove looks awesome. I'm reaching out because Grove looks awesome. I really align with the mission of making financial advice more accessible and valuable. I'm also super passionate about anything that comes to financial optimization. Are you up for a quick call? I didn't respond right away, but he followed up a few days later and was like, hey, do you have time? And I was like, all right, this kid's got some hustle. Like, he's willing to get there. So brought him in to at least meet us at the office. He gave a presentation about why he thought he would be great. We didn't really have a role there, but he just kept following up. He followed up with the presentation he made. He followed up with an article he thought was good. He published a blog post. He followed up with that. He gave a presentation at his office about personal finance, and he sent that. I shared it around the company. It just was one of those things where I could tell that he wasn't just saying he was excited about finance to us and then saying the same thing to 50 other companies. Like, he really cared about what we were doing. And that's the kind of person that every company wants on their team.
Yeah, Chris, that's really amazing. So you're saying, obviously, every email address is out there. So if that's your stumbling block and you can't even get started, you're probably not doing it right. Does it have to go through the founder? So, I mean, at some level, you're not going to get in touch with Sergey and Larry from Google. That's not happening. But are there levels that you've seen? So, like, let's talk outside of growth. Like, have you seen this work in other companies?
Yeah, I mean, my wife runs business development and partnerships at Lyft. If you wanted to work on her team, the worst possible route to get to her is to try to get in front of, Logan or John, the two founders, is not the right path. They have so much going on and they're probably so disconnected from hiring on the BD team that that's definitely not the right path. So, I always say if you're trying to find a job, try to figure out who the hiring manager or decision maker is on that team and go there, maybe even one level higher, right? So it might be the person running BD or running the business, unit that reports to. At a startup, it could be anyone, right? If anyone at this company refers a candidate for any job, like we jump on it because we're like, man, we trust our employees to know who amazing people are. So at some scale, that happens so much. Like at Google, I think if you refer a candidate, they always get talked to, but there's probably thousands of candidates getting referred every day. So the bigger the company, the more closely you need to get to the job. Whereas at a 30-person company, you could get to any single person at the company. I just happen to have more connections. The company I joined was all engineers except for the founders. And one of the founders was also an engineer. So I knew no one in engineering land. So my only route was to the founder because everyone else was kind of very connected to the engineering community that I was pretty disconnected from.
And Chris, you're describing Arthur, right? As like, there's this fine line here, though, between hustling and being annoying. Okay, he sent this first email, you didn't get back to him. He sent the second, and then, okay, you started the conversation. But put yourself in his shoes or somebody else's shoes on the other side. At what point do you give up? And are there different avenues?
And surely there's different avenues, right? He could get an intro from someone else. He could try to flag me on social media instead of there's a lot of avenues. The interesting thing is Arthur probably actually had a bunch of people in common and probably could have reached out there. And I'm sure he would have as his second alternative. He wrote with such heart that he was like actually excited about what we're doing that, it didn't feel like he was just persistent to be annoying. Like he actually cared. And so I respect that. I was looking at a candidate for another role we're hiring for. And on this time, I'm doing the outreach and I'm being the annoying, persistent person. And I sent this person 3 follow-ups, in the course of 2 weeks. And they wrote back, finally wrote back and said, Chris, I admire your persistence. You've been emailing me at my work email. Here's my personal email. Let's chat on Friday. And so, it's funny. I got on the phone and I was like, yeah, sorry. I just thought you seemed like such a great fit. I wanted to reach out. And he's like, no, I admire like how hard you pushed. I can say there's probably a point at which it's annoying if you're not getting any feedback, you're not changing anything, you're not being genuine. But I think most people's belief of where that line is, it's further away than they think.